Welcome back to the Backup Power Project. In this video, using scientific method, I'll prove that when used to measure backup power systems, like the ones shown in this playlist, true RMS multimeters, including this expensive $500 AMPROBE clamp meter, are grossly inaccurate and not to be trusted. That's the hypothesis. I'll prove it with a lengthy experiment. Together, we'll analyze the data. My conclusion? True RMS is total BS. Let's get into it. Now, while working on a pair of APC model BAC UPS 450 uninterruptible power supplies, I discovered that these make excellent true RMS multimeter testers. The reason this video is being made, this $500 AMPROBE, advertised as true RMS accurate, not this one. Now, 18th century philosopher Voltaire said, before you converse with me, define your terms. And that was to prevent misunderstanding. So what do we mean by true RMS? Well, that's easiest to explain with some analog audio equipment. So here is an old JVC stereo, portable stereo cassette player, radio. And we have it's analog, of course, and we have a volume control. Now, I can't turn this on and actually play anything because I'll get a copyright strike from YouTube. They'll say I'm stealing the AM radio or whatever. But it doesn't matter because we've all had experience with this kind of radio. So when I turn up the volume control right here, I can probably get to 50, maybe 60%, and the sound will be pretty clear. Now, if I go much past 60%, in my experience, doesn't matter what stereo amplifier it is, once you get much past 60%, could be a rotary knob, it doesn't matter, the sound starts to get very distorted. And of course, if you go to max, right here, this is as loud as the box can get, and it's really very, very distorted. So this maximum level is called peak power. Now, unless your purpose is to make as much noise as possible, it's not usable. Since this is sold as a piece of audio gear, the usable power is back here somewhere, around 50 or 60%. And that's called the RMS audio output. So RMS, root mean square, is a measurement of the usable functional power of the equipment. And peak power, even though it's louder, it's not serving the purpose for which it was intended. You can't really listen to that music unless you're trying to scare away animals in your garden or something. It's just making a racket, going to blow out your speakers, damage your ears. That's peak power. So that difference now between peak and true RMS, that's your distortion area. And when we measure total harmonic distortion, we're talking about the distortion that occurs between the RMS value and the peak value. And the same is true for electrical outlets. We can't adjust the power that comes in from the grid, but it has a peak value and it has a true RMS value. Now let's demonstrate that. Now this APS BAC UPS 450 is plugged into the grid, and we have a kilowatt meter that cost about $20. Bought that from Amazon many years ago. It's supposed to be true RMS. That's reading 120.4 volts. That's my line voltage at the moment. And I also have plugged into this a little portable fan. I'm here in the garage. I'm going to disconnect this APC from AC power by turning off this power strip. Now, according to, and the little green blinking light indicates that we're now on battery backup power. Now, according to my kilowatt meter, not much has happened. Kilowatt says we're at 114.4 volts, so we've only lost about 6 volts AC. That's supposed to be true RMS, by the way. But what happened to the fan? It's barely spinning right now. Before, you might have heard the noise. Now watch, I'm going to turn the AC power back on. I'm going to go back on grid. So hopefully the camera's picking up that noise and you can see the difference in the speed of the blades. We'll turn off AC power. The fan almost comes to a stop. Yet, the kilowatt says we're still running at 116.7 volts. That just can't be. That cannot be, because 116 volts is not a brownout. Talk about irony. Now, you're going to get slightly different definitions of what a brownout is, depending upon where you look, but this is worth reading. Quote, in the USA, a brownout voltage level typically refers to a drop in the electrical supply voltage below the nominal value. Okay, what's the nominal value? Specifically, a brownout occurs when the AC supply voltage drops below about 90 volts in the USA, which is a reduction from the standard 110 to 120 volts. Brownouts can cause unexpected behavior in systems with digital control circuits and can bring control signals below the threshold at which logic circuits can reliably detect which state is being represented. Now, I wonder if that's what's going on here. To protect against the effects of brownouts, it is recommended to use surge protectors, or UPS, uninterruptible power supply systems, which can help regulate and stabilize voltage levels, minimizing the risk of damage to sensitive electronic devices. But this is a UPS. In summary, a brownout voltage level in the USA is generally recognized as a drop below 90 volts, which can significantly impact the performance and functionality of electrical devices. Well, that's exactly what we're witnessing here. And the fan tells us we've just experienced a brownout. So this is not making any sense. That can't be RMS voltage. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, your internal battery is weak, and that's why you're experiencing this. But that's not the case. So I have a second unit here, and I've modified that unit to work on an external battery. And the reason I did that is so that we could monitor the voltage of that external battery. And if we were running on that unit right now, you'd see that that external battery is up around 13 volts. And so is this internal one. It's a perfectly good battery inside this unit. We've experienced a brownout, but the kilowatt, which is supposed to be true RMS, is not showing it. Okay, that's only 20 bucks. Here's my amp probe. This amp probe is close to $500. I've turned the AC power back on, and this amp probe is showing 121.3 volts. and my kilowatt is showing 120.8. So we have a slight discrepancy between the two true RMS meters. And you can hear and see the fan blowing up a storm here. Alright, now let's check total harmonic distortion. Let's see if I can pop this up. Hold this for a couple seconds. Nope. There we go. Shows that our THD on the power line is 6%. That's about average. That's what this meter always shows. Alright, now I'm going to turn off the AC power. And incredibly, this is now showing 132.5% total harmonic distortion. I don't even know what to make of that. And that's at 118 volts AC. Well, this just can't be right. You can't have You can't have 127% total harmonic distortion, and yet there's line voltage is still 118 volts. This can't be reading correctly. Impossible. We have a brownout going on. So $500 meter. This is wacko. So now I've got a B side. This is a model ZT-QB9. Pretty nice meter. Only paid about $25 for this. It does peak inrush current, auto ranging on everything. Let's see, we're on battery power right now. Kilowatt is still saying 117 volts. The fan is still stalled. Let's turn this on and see what it says for voltage. $117.6 volts. 117 volts. Pretty much consistent with the kilowatt. So we have two meters advertised as true RMS, and they're telling me there's nothing wrong with this AC power. And yet, that fan is barely running. So what's going on here? Let me turn the AC back on. Hear the click, fan comes back up again. A difference of 3 volts is not going to cause that. That fan will run perfectly on 117 volts of clean power. So these meters, the 3 we've shown so far, highly suspicious. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to transfer these leads. You see we're showing 121 line voltage right now. I'm going to transfer these leads to my trusty 40-year-old Fluke 37. Okay, the Fluke 37 showing 122 volts. Kilowatt showing 121. Now watch what happens when I turn off the line voltage. Right here. Fan goes down. Fluke is showing 100 volts. Oh, That's more like it. So something's wrong. That's a big discrepancy from one true RMS meter showing 116, another meter showing 99.6. Well, this is a 40-year-old American-made fluke. What do you expect? It can't be right. And we'll turn it off. And next, we're going to try my Fluke 12. This one is, I bought this in the late 80s, early 90s, so it's easily 35 years old. I have used this meter thousands of times, literally thousands of times. Best meter for electronic troubleshooting ever made, in my opinion. Most practical. So, okay, maybe I should have turned it on AC first. Okay, select. Alright, we're on AC volts. Still on battery power. Oh, look at that. It agrees with the 40-year-old Fluke 37. Well, 100 volts, that would explain the brownout, wouldn't it? But according to this $500 amp probe, we don't have a brownout. No brownout going on. So okay, this was my first Fluke 12. Now, after a few years, I liked this so much and I used it daily. I never wanted to be without one, so I bought a second one just in case I ever dropped or broke this one. And you can tell the difference because you see the microfarad button here all worn out, and this microfarad button looks pretty much like new. This one also has a lot cleaner test leads. So we're going to go switch off to this second meter, see what this one says. This is a little bit newer, probably 5 years newer. Okay, here's the second Fluke 12. It's a 98.4, 98.3. Consistent with my older Fluke 12, consistent with the Fluke 37. So less than 100 volts here. But the kilowatt is still showing 115, and that fan is still nearly stalled. Here's a Fluke 10. There you go, 98 volts. So we have consistent measurement of a little bit less than 100 volts across 4 Fluke meters to date. To the best of my knowledge, these are all American-made Flukes. They came with super flexible test leads. I can't even tell you how many thousands of times these meters have been used. Okay, so next we have a Chinese-made Fluke 17B. I'm not even sure that this is genuine because it is such a step down from my American-made meters. My American-made meters came with super flexible test leads. These test leads are junk like the cheap Harbor Freight stuff. But let's see. I'm gonna put it on AC. Okay, Chinese Fluke 17B. Showing a little bit higher voltage, 100.9, but still consistent with these 4 older American-made Flukes. And of course, that would explain why we're seeing the fan not working very well. Kilowatt still showing 116.7 volts. Okay, let's see how this reads the power line. I'm going to turn the AC power back on. Alright, relay clicked. We're up to 122 volts. So not bad. Alright, next we have a Tenma. This was my first ACDC clamp meter. I paid about $40 for this, probably, I don't know, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. We're on the line. It's showing 121.5. Now there were two models of this. This 7224 was not advertised as true RMS. To get true RMS to read here in the display, you had to buy the 7225. It was a little more money. I did not do that at the time, but let's see what this says. I'll turn off the power. Okay, this is the blue Harbor Freight meter. The list price on this meter is about $20. It is not advertised as true RMS, and you can see it's reading 115.8 volts, pretty much consistent with what the kilowatt says. So is this cheap $14 Harbor Freight meter really reading true RMS? Fan's not doing so well. Alright, let's turn AC power back on. Fan's kicked up, we're reading 120, same as the kilowatt. Alright, next, I'm going to put this away. We're going to try the cheapest meter here on the table. This is a giveaway Harbor Freight meter. But they're not giving these away free with purchase. They're typically $3.99, sometimes $1.99. I've seen these as low as 99 cents. This is the cheapest meter money can buy. The test leads, they have some sort of custom socket here. You can't even use any fluke test leads in here, or the test leads from any of these other meters will not fit these sockets. So what we're going to do is just stick these probes. I'm going to just stick the probes in here. In fact, these aren't even the original probes, because the original probes on all of these meters fall apart almost immediately. So this technically, this is a toy. Okay, we're reading 120.65.5 volts. That's line voltage. Turn the line voltage off. Look at that. Even the toy correctly detects that we have a brownout. This is a toy, a giveaway toy, and it's sensing the brownout. Literally, these are 99-cent, $1.99, free with purchase digital multimeters. Piece of junk toy, but it's reading true voltage, consistent with all of my fluke meters, consistent with my 10-mar clamp meter. Okay. Here we are back on the AMPROBE. $500. Here we are on battery. It's showing 117 volts. But we have a brownout. So my conclusion, this one's $500 more or less, and it's no better than this. Not even as accurate as this throwaway cheap toy meter. And that is disgusting. That's disgusting. Okay, so now I've switched the kilowatt to the unit that runs off an external battery, and I've connected up this voltmeter to it so that we can monitor the condition of the external battery. And I guess I got to turn it on. Okay, power line is on. We can see the fan spinning up a storm. We can see that the External batteries, 13.5 volts. Kilowatt, don't know if it's showing up in the camera, I can barely see it. It says 121 point something volts. What does the amp probe say? Amp probe is showing 122 volts. Let's try to get a THD reading. THD of 6.1%. Okay, I'm going to turn off the AC power. Now the amp probe shows 49.3%, that's 50% distortion, using that external battery. 50% distortion on that second unit. Kilowatt shows 115 volts. And this also shows 115.9 volts at 50% distortion. To get to the bottom of this, I've hooked up a mini scope. We're showing a peak-to-peak voltage of, in the area, 324 volts. We're showing an RMS voltage of somewhere in the 121 volts. This is on the line. So we're showing line voltage peak to peak of 324. I just wouldn't have imagined that would be true. But okay, let's take it offline, see what happens. All right. There's your waveform offline. We still have a peak-to-peak voltage in a 360 volt range. Would never have imagined that. We're showing via RMS of 118. Exactly what the amp probe is showing. Exactly what the, or pretty much the same as what the kilowatt is showing. Now, bear in mind that this is an uninterruptible power supply made for your sensitive electronics. And here's the fan. You can see that it's barely spinning. The amp probe says we're at 115 volts. This is showing an RMS voltage of 116. It does show an outrageous maximum voltage of 242. Shows a peak-to-peak of 485 volts. Now remember, this is an uninterruptible power supply. Often in the advertising they'll say that you're supposed to put your medical devices and run your medical devices on this. I sure hope your medical devices can do better than that fan. Because what we actually have here, no matter what any of these instruments say, we have a tremendous brownout. Let's put a real meter on these. Okay, I've switched the probes to my Fluke 12. And it's clearly showing that the line voltage is 86.6 volts. And that is why this fan is barely spinning. we have a terrific brownout situation. If this had been a refrigerator, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the compressor did not burn out. I don't know how anyone would want anything to run on 86 volts AC here in the US. So in my opinion, based on what I'm recording on my Fluke, based on what I'm observing here on this fan, based on the waveform that I see here, in my opinion, this unit is not suited for the purpose to which it's intended. It's supposed to be an uninterruptible power supply. I would think that any reasonable person would think it was going to deliver power within the US range of, say, 110 to 124 volts, because that's what we have here, 117 plus or minus 7 volts. We are way out of range here. This is a brownout. Not suited for the purpose to which it's intended. And neither is this, because it does not properly indicate what's going on. That's my opinion. Now, Fluke and AMPROBE are the same company, so I reported these results to them, and their response is printed in its entirety in the video description. The question was, true RMS or total BS? And I think they've answered that question. In the meantime, so I have my friend Mark here, and he brought his collection of multimeters over, and we're going to conduct the same test to see which ones accurately record what's going on with this backup power unit and which ones don't. Now Mark, you say this is a Kelvin model 93. When did you get this?
Around 1990.
Okay, he says 1990, and we can see on the line we're reading 120.4 volts. Fan in the picture. See, the fan is blowing up a storm. See a nice sine wave pattern on the scope.
Perfect.
Okay, now we'll go on the battery backup. Fan slows down almost to a stall, and this 35-year-old meter accurately recording the brownout, 88.7 volts AC. So this is a, I don't know how you pronounce this, KAI WEETS model HT118A, pretty nice. Also shows you 60 hertz, 120.45 volts AC. We have our nice sine wave. The fan is blowing up a storm. Let's see what happens when we turn the power off. Alright, we're on battery backup. How much did you pay for this?
I don't remember. No, less than 50 bucks.
Less than 50 bucks, and how old is it?
1 year old.
1 year old. Do you 117.5? What do you think?
I think it's the same problem you've discovered with all the other ones.
It certainly is not accurate.
It certainly isn't.
A Craftsman, model 82139. How old is this one? You say 15 years old? 15 years old. We're online, we're recording 115.7.8. Still have our nice power company sine wave. Alright, we'll go on the battery backup. And the reliable Craftsman shows 85.4 volts AC. And there's your modified sine wave. Okay, so next we have a Fluke 87 that's seen better days. I don't even know that this is gonna...
Yeah, no, it's getting worse. Oh well.
Time to try to collect on the lifetime warranty.
Well, here's how it works with Fluke now. Because my meter is no longer in production, they will. I get a fabulous deal. If I trade this one in, it'll only cost me $400+ like $432 for a new one. I didn't even ask what would it cost me just to buy a new one. But I actually know what's wrong with this one, and I've repaired it in the past, and it's in my pile to get repaired again. So I said to them, no, I've got lots of other Fluke meters that actually work that are far older than this one. And I said, I'll stick with those. I said, thanks, but no thanks. So that's the warranty. Not much warranty.
So it's the meter's lifetime, not the owner's lifetime. Did you know that? I didn't. Hard to say what it's doing.
Looks like 119.
Looks like 119, but who knows? In any event, we don't have 119 volts here.
Right.
Okay, next we have a Fluke 77. We're on line voltage. It's reading 121.3 volts AC. So what's the story on this meter, Mark?
That's a meter I bought used. I bought it in the 1990s. Somebody replaced their bench thing, and they sold it to me at a price I thought was a good price.
Well, the display still looks pretty good. It has an analog graph too. That's going to tell us a lot. All right, I'm going to turn the power off. We'll run on battery. And it accurately tells us that the voltage has dropped. Brownout condition, 89.5. You cannot beat these legacy Flukes. I'd hang on to this one, that's for sure. Okay, here's a Fluke 73. What's the story on this one?
Also bought in the 1990s. I can't remember what I paid for it, but it's done yeoman service. I've used it for 30 years.
Okay, Fluke 73, reading 121.6 line voltage. Turn off the line power. And once again, the old Fluke accurately reports the brownout, showing us 89.4 volts AC. Once again explaining what happened to the fan. Once again showing the usable voltage from the battery power. Another accurate meter. Right, next we have an AMPROBE AM17. And what's the story on this one, Mark?
I've only had that probably 7 or 8 years. I can't remember.
You know how old it is?
I'm going to guess it's 10 years old.
10 years old. Okay, well, it's reporting a line voltage of 122.2. Nice sine wave on the line. Okay, we'll turn off the AC power. Run on battery power. And isn't it interesting? This AMPROBE accurately reports 89.4.5 volts. Unfortunately, my new $500 amp probe doesn't show that. But the old amp probe does. Alright, next we have a Craftsman IP67. And how old is this one?
At least 10 years.
10 years old. Recording a line voltage of 120.6 volts. Fan is blowing up a storm. Here's our line voltage sine wave. Alright, on battery backup power now. And look, the old Craftsman says that we've got 117.7 volts. But you can see the fan is barely turning. You can't hear it. Completely inaccurate. No good. And next we have a Lafayette TE-77A multimeter. These came out in 1972. We sold a ton of these in my Lafayette Radio Electronics store. It was the first tiny meter of its kind. It doesn't even have a function and range switch. You have to move the test leads depending upon what you wish to measure. So 28 plus 25, this is 53 years old. Can't tell you how many times I actually used this. Let's see if it still works after 53 years. Now the probes are different, so I'm going to have to stick these. See if I can get these to work.
How about if I hold the probes in there?
Okay, great.
Hold that.
There you go. Okay, it's an analog meter. We're almost at the top of the scale. Let me zoom in on that. Okay, so I'm going to say we're at about 117 volts. Fan is blowing up a storm. A sine wave. Turning off the AC power. Oh, big drop in voltage. That's down below the 85 mark, so that's around 79, 80 volts is what this old meter is showing. We sold those for $6.95, I believe. Back in 1972. More accurate than the $500 amp probe. Just amazing. And so today, I've got a Habotest socket tester. And this is a little meter that you stick in your outlets, and it tells you if they're wired properly and also tells you what your line voltage is. So we can see this one's reading 117 volts. Fan's blowing up a storm. Let me turn the AC power off. Now we're on battery backup. You can tell that because the green light is blinking, indicating battery backup power. Fan has almost stalled. But the most amazing thing, it's telling us that we have 123 volts here. Who believes that we have 122 volts here? Leave a comment. I want to know who believes that. Okay, I'm going to turn the power back on. Fan has started spinning up a storm again. Now it says the voltage has dropped to 118 volts. So according to this meter, The fan does better at 118 volts than it does at 120 some volts. Yep. I want to know who believes that. AI doesn't believe it. So you type in APC only 90 volts, APC BN450M, only 90 volts true RMS on battery, and here's what AI tells you. Quote, the APC BN450M UPS unit outputs 90 volts true RMS on battery mode, which is a standard specification for this model. And yet, this $500 AMPROBE ACDC-52NAV true RMS navigator clamp meter, as well as all of these other so-called true RMS meters, tell us that the APC BN450 is putting out 118 volts AC on battery. Who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe your own eyes? Are you going to believe AI? Well, a very wise source tells us that plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And that seeking advice from multiple sources can lead to better action, better decision making, and success. So here are all of these other sources. And they say, no, it's not 118 volts. It's more like 94.5 volts. But if you just stop and think about this, we have over a dozen test instruments here, some very expensive test instruments. And for quick math, we're going to round things off. We're going to say that these meters are averaging 90 volts. We're going to say the others are averaging 120 volts. Well, that's a 30 volt difference. 120 minus 90, 30 volts. And depending upon how you look at that, from the top or from the bottom, it's either a 25% or 33.33% measurement error. And when you do the actual math, it's 31%. How can expensive test instruments disagree with each other to the tune of 31%? It makes no sense. How can anyone have measurement confidence in any of these instruments? And yet, AMPROBE says, have confidence in our meter. Our meter is correct. So you can read their rebuttal by clicking the More button here under the video description. Now, as I understand what they're saying that the reason the fan is malfunctioning in these experiments is not because of low voltage. No. It's not low voltage. It's the modified sine wave that's doing it. Well, here are two more experiments to disprove that statement. Now, before you cast your vote, I've set up a little experiment using a Harbor Freight Centec, actually this one's a Chicago Electric 400 watt power verter. Now I only paid, I don't want to exaggerate, I got this on sale and it was less than $15. I seem to recall this was around $12.95 when I bought it. I've got my Fluke 12 connected. You can see 117 volts. That's confirmed here on the little scope. Scope is showing the square wave. So this is not a sine wave inverter. It's definitely modified sine wave, more like a square wave. Cooling fan has turned on. It's masking the sound of this fan, but you can see how fast it's rotating, blowing up a storm. Working fine, working absolutely fine. We've got plenty of voltage. So this proves It's not the square wave that's causing the fan to stall. It's the low voltage brownout situation that occurs when you're connected to one of these. Now, this is a very cheap 400 watt inverter, but it's producing respectable, genuine, real output voltage. And so the fan works fine. It's not the square wave, it's the low voltage. Low voltage. Not good. And here's a second test. I liked that little 400 watt inverter so much that when this larger 750 watt went on sale at Harbor Freight, I bought this as well. Now, I don't remember what I paid for this exactly. I know it was less than $20. I'm going to guess I paid about $17, maybe $16, $17.95. So I have the 750 hooked up, same exact configuration. Here's our little scope. You can see the square wave. Here's my Fluke 12 that gives me a true voltage, tells me what's going on in the circuit. Says we have 118.4 volts AC. The fan is blowing up a storm, working fine, the same as if I had it plugged into electricity here. But it's plugged into the inverter, working perfectly. So further proof, it's not the modified sine wave that caused the fan to run so poorly when it was connected to these APC uninterruptible power supplies. It was the low voltage. And we can make a third experiment as well. We can connect this fan to a variac, and we can lower the voltage to 90 volts or 100 volts, and of course it spins way down, and around 90 volts it almost stalls. So again, not the modified sine wave. It's the low voltage that you have here that's causing the problem. But don't take my word for it. I would much rather that people do the science than trust the science. So in order to duplicate my experiment, you're going to need an APC back UPS BN450M. Now, the actual unit I used costs around $60. Here, someone is selling it for $58. Best Buy apparently just closed these out at $11. That's a pretty good deal. And then the fan. The fan I used, the little desktop or tabletop fan, that one is probably 30 years old. Here's the make and model. You can still buy something similar today. You may probably have something similar. Here's one I found on Amazon. If you're going to buy a fan to duplicate this experiment, make sure that it's a plug-in fan, not a fan that runs on flashlight batteries, and not a USB fan. This makes an excellent science project. And yes, we have done real science here. So how to do science? It says here that science is a systematic and evidence-based approach to understanding through observation. Yep, we observed that fan. Experimentation. Yes, we made all kinds of experiments here. And analysis. Yep, we're analyzing the data. So we've got several key steps. Number 1, ask a question. Our question is, true RMS or total BS? And we form that hypothesis. That's exactly our hypothesis, that it's total BS. And then, through experimentation, we go about proving it. We amass quite a bit of data, and we analyze that data. Here's the unfiltered data. And then, finally, we come to a conclusion, and communication. So the communication would be this video. Initially, I communicated these findings through AMPROBE, and now I'm just communicating them on my channel. So you can draw your own conclusion. I would like to hear from you. I'd like to hear what you think. True RMS or total BS? Just leave a comment. Now, I know what my conclusion is. Thanks for watching.